One of the primary aspects of leadership, I would tend to feel that you build your team, because I always feel that leader is as good as the team. And so that's a hygiene. Once you don't have your team, you are not effective even half of what you can achieve. And then I've made one thing very clear: when we get a team on board and down the line people who report to them, the primary job of the leader is to align an individual objective with the organizational objective. Once you can do that, your job is done. Nobody is in an organization for altruistic measure. They're here for livelihood, but at the same time, the prosperity of an individual and the organization are interlinked. So that's the first and foremost step as a leader. And I think I've been able to inculcate that belief and that sense of belonging with the organizations amongst my team very well, because there are people who have been working with me in the same team for over 2.5 decades, many of them. So that's how I look at leadership first. And we were taught in our business management school, the first lesson of leadership is followership. Right? So
I was just going to ask you that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the first lesson. And I, as a leader or as an individual, I never stop learning. I learn from everybody, from everything, what comes around me. And I believe that you cease to live the moment you stop learning. So that is the other leadership aspects which I try to wear on my sleeves. And job of a leader, if you ask me, are 3. I mean, I think they are an exhaustive list. As a leader, first you need to take decisions. So you're very lonely at the top. When I was not at the top, also when I was head of a division, head of P&L, so decision making is there, and therefore you cannot enjoy authority without responsibility. So that's the first job of a leader. The second is obviously you manage people. As a leader, you hardly do things yourself. So you manage people. And the third is you need to know your trade, you need to know your business. I try and get myself to that position that any of my top management team, if push comes to shove, and I should be able to do their job at least as good as they do their job. So which essentially means that I should be able to add value when they're stuck. So this is how I simplified the role of a leader.
Okay.
And I live it.
Okay, so my next question you already have answered, but I'll still go ahead with asking it. They say that a great leader. There are of course various concepts of leadership, and people give their own answers. But I firmly believe a great leader is a leader who develops and nurtures great followership. How do you develop and nurture great followership, and what is that role of a leader or a quality of a leader that differentiates from other leaders, that generates followership?
See, followership, I don't know how you put it. Okay, this is how I look at it, and I believe it. And I said that once to my secretary. First of all, I told him that, fundamentally, your status and my status are identical in an organization. I was a CEO then, and he was my secretary. I said, both of us are here to earn our livelihood by discharging our professional responsibilities, leveraging our competence. That defines both you and me. Accepting the fact that maybe I was a bit more luckier than you are, or maybe I worked harder than you did. So that is a principle, that is a feeling that I bear. So there's a dead honesty in it. I don't say it for the sake of saying. I say it as I mean. And therefore, the followership things, it becomes bi-directional. It's a two-way. As I said, that I learn from everyone. And like for instance, when you're the CEO and you have department heads, I consider that each of the department heads are CEOs of their respective department. So the followership comes If you ask me to give you a one-line answer for followership to inculcate and develop, is mutual respect, mutual value addition, and mutual learning. If that happens, so it's more like a friendship from a followership. So that brings in sense of belonging. That makes your job very easy. Your challenge is shouldered and shared by your team.
Okay. So in today's world of innovation, where daily innovative products come out, building consumers, of course, becomes a task for any leader for their brand. Concepts have changed where just leadership is not just about building trust or innovating. Today, a good leader is somebody who builds a community for himself, for the brand, for the company. Talk a little bit about how you feel that a good leader should build up a community for himself, where the role becomes easy for the future and for your future leaders.
I would like to get a clarification on the question a little bit. There's a community which is within the organization, so which is internal. And there's a community that you build, a relationship which you build with your consumers. So that's a different thing. So building a community within the organization is where the leadership comes in play in a very direct manner. Because consumers, building your relationship with the consumer is a long process. It's a step-by-step process. So that I, to some extent, already answered that sense of belonging, where you can align the individual objectives with organization's objective, where people have that sense of respect, sense of pride. There's somewhere you need to build that sense that everybody is almost equal in some respect, whereas organizational hierarchy is important to run the business effectively, but there's a sense of equality that needs to be there. So that eventually rallies around you, people rally around you to build a community and sense of belongingness.
But talk a little bit about your journey, where you think personally that makes you a transformational leader.
Okay,
some self-assessment.
Self-assessment. I think transformational. You can define it in many ways. First of all, I'm a very restless soul, restless person, because I feel that you can't extend your life, but you can live your life twice, thrice more if you are very action-oriented and you have planned out your things. So that's what I look at, and then I have a serious discomfort with status quo. Anything, I mean, which actually becomes a little bit of pressure for people around me. I want everything to be perfect. There is a scope of improvement in everything. If I walk into this room, then I will look at the books and I'll see that where they can be made a little better. So once I'm uncomfortable about status quo, which essentially translates into transformation. So I would like to improve upon things constantly, and there's no end to it.
Okay. So the Indian media, you have been a stalwart of the media industry. The Indian media, the Indian industry you have seen a lot of changes. What do you think have been the key components of a great leader in this industry? Talk about your industry, where you think a leader has really done well and gone ahead with his qualities. What are the qualities that he saw and seized the opportunities which you think were very important?
See, the industry that you talked about, media and entertainment industry, according to me, the news media and the entertainment media, they are completely two different animals. So people tend to classify them, club them together as one industry. I don't think so. So that's because entertainment is more like a traditional business. You find out what the consumer wants, you create your product, you take it to the market and try and get more and more consumers to consume it. And of course in India, it's more advertising driven, the entire media, less of subscription driven. Everything is subsidized, but nonetheless the advertising also the consumers are paying through via media. As far as news is concerned, it's a completely different business. First of all, you need to first come to terms with the identity. Are you a business? If you see how news started from around the pre-independence time, one philosophical driven individual would have started a newspaper to propagate his philosophies. Mostly that was anti-establishment, because you're in a country which was ruled by foreigners. So therefore he was funding it, it wasn't a business. Then I think around the early 90s, when economic liberalization was happening, that is the time I entered this media business as a management trainee. That is the time media started being viewed as a business. Media in the sense that news media. That time it was more print. So the concept of brand management had come in, concept of marketing. Earlier, advertising sales used to be called marketing in media. So all this started changing in the around the early 90s. And news from newspaper moved on to news television. I think the leadership, primarily if you see news industry, the leadership has always been driven by the content side. I mean, you have great product, great people like Dr. Pranay Roy, you've got the circus in Bengal, then India Today, big brands. So those leaderships, again, originally they were driven by a very strong editorial mind. And then organizations like Times of India and all changed to the form of that it is a business. So they've given it the outfit of a business, typical business. So these are the two kinds of leadership that I see that had happened. One is a content editorial leadership, and the one is the Times of India.
So Tim is CEO of a media company. I mean,
news media or entertainment?
News, right?
News.
Okay. So there's always this clash between you brought the content is the king. There will always be a clash between the editorial geniuses and the ad sales geniuses.
Ad sales was very
so how as a head do you balance?
No, I'll tell you, that
things?
is where it is. If you traditionally look at a newspaper company, the holier than thou people were the content people.
Absolutely.
They were more educated than the mass. They were the opinion formers. In terms of business side, I have seen it myself. You had somebody who was in charge of production, then somebody who kept track of the accounts, and then there's a bunch of people who were going out and getting advertising. And in earlier days, when it started, the advertising sales in a media was not a very coveted job. Normally, I've seen people moving from yellow pages to come to print. And you wouldn't join yellow pages as a young professional to sell advertising unless and until you have exhausted your other better options. So that's how it started. So I couldn't blame the editorial side to look down upon the business side. I mean, I think collectively we were not matching their wits and geniuses. That was the time I'm saying that then things started changing. Then so-called or professionals, people with educational background started joining the business side. From ad sales being called marketing, from there you had concept of real marketing coming in, real brands coming in, looking at business expansion. Then it became the entire business. But one thing, when I was almost growing with this journey, right? I realized one thing. I personally, that is another thing I believe, that something that I'm not good at, I'll always be respectful. Something like even an actor, I would never be able to act. I mean, I have too overt a character. I am very respectful to actors and actresses because that's something which I can't do. Similarly, I don't think that I am cut out to be a journalist. I've never tried that, but prima facie, that's what I felt, and I had always been very respectful for their work, which is journalism. And respect is commanded. Once you respect the person sitting across the table as per his due, and once you can prove your worth, the other person also, unless and until he's blind or his mind is already made up, he doesn't want to be confused with facts, then you earn that respect. So it has to be a mutual respect, and I had faced that. I've worked with very senior journalists who had taken this business side not so seriously. I earned their respect, I earned their seriousness because I started delivering, which happens even in in an organization like ours, you start earning it, right? Once you earn it, then it is
That's
yours.
everywhere. Okay, so my next question on this, linking to this, of course, you talked about ad sales and everything. Gone are those days from from yellow pages and cold calling to today. Ad sales is a different business. Of course, it runs a company, and revenue is a part of every company's main portfolio, main thing. How, as a head of a company, do you maintain that balance? And of course, that's how successful companies are, especially in media, where the editorial sanctity is maintained, yet business is not compromised. How, as a head, would
So
you
that is
brief your both the sides?
That's how it is. That brings into discussion another belief of mine, that if you're not true to your identity, you will never be successful. So I think I still believe that the identity of media, news media, is that of a fourth pillar. So we are the fourth pillar of the democracy, so that sanctity to be maintained. And as even a journalist would like to have an increment, would not mind driving a bigger car, so the money also has to be earned.
Absolutely.
So unless and until creativity, you can make commerce out of creativity, or you can make commerce out of content, I don't think the commerce, that content or that creativity would last long or sustain or can flourish. So you have to then roll the pitch and make people understand that individual relative importance, and bring in that respect in each other's mind.
Okay. So as a transformational leader, what are the most difficult situations have you faced in your industry in all your 25 years of operation? And how do you
now.
think,
30 years now.
30 years, okay. And how do you think that you have overcome each one of them, and your proudest moment of a difficult phase that you think you overcame for a company?
See, another thing I believe, these are my beliefs, that I always feel that there is always at least one solution for any problem. So you need to find out. And I often had felt, and I've made it, that I've converted challenges into opportunities. So I've never given up. That's first thing. And no matter what happens in the industry, you have to find out your ways to reach your target, reach your bottom line. So the first one, if I recall, that I think it was 9/11 when I was with India Today then. It was a big jolt on the economy across the world. Advertising took a huge beating. I used to head the P&L of one of the divisions there. We grew. So I realized one thing at that point, and that was one of the challenges. So every time, next challenge has always made me feel that the last challenge was far more easier. So that was the first challenge that I faced, and I realized that there's enough money. Money is there in the market. It's the inertia. People are apprehensive. They're not confident. So you need to give them some more reasons to experiment. So that is the time I brought the entire advertising sales approach to solution-driven approach. That I'm not going to ask for your money. I'm going to give you a solution. So that's how that happened. That was 9/11. Then the next one I faced is that when I was with Z News Limited, it was 2008-9 recession. That was a bad time. So again, I've had that solution-driven approach, and I believed in my mind, and therefore I could convince the entire team that things are fine. Don't give up. And then there was another challenge there, because that Z News Limited is a unique experience. I knew that there were many CEOs before me, and no CEO usually lasted there for more than a year. So that was another challenge that I was constantly living with, and going through the recession. But that we overcome, me and my team, and I think, if I remember it correctly, during those 5 years of my stint, despite going through this recession, we had a CAGR of close to 18% in our revenue. It's a listed company. So that was the second one. The added challenge that time was to be in that environment where it's not very stable, where the owners had a lot of say and stake in it. Though I had protected my turf, that's why we could do well. And then came COVID. I think that supersedes, that overshadows all the challenges any one of us faced in our life. First of all, every phone call in the morning that you pick it up with bad news, maybe. So that is the third one, and we were at a formative stage. There are a lot of things happened into our advantage then, but the fear. So I told, so I had a town hall. So before COVID, when I joined TV9, which was again a southern-based 2-channel company, we've launched TV9 Bharatvarsh, which is not doing very well. So when I had a town hall in the studio, the shoulders were stooping. People are not very confident. So I said that, listen, you are from a staple of leaders. So the destiny is decided. Only the time frame is to be decided, that you have to reach the top. And there were questions, how will you do it? So I said, the first, you start believing it from now on. The rest, I will drive. And then COVID struck. So then I had another town hall, and I had to tell people that, listen, you are part of that industry which is supposed to be classified as an essential services. I don't think that we can have the luxury of staying put in our room, in our house, close comfort of our house. The reporters were out there in the on the street. So we have to understand, like I give them an example. Let's say you have landed up in the hospital, you had an emergency heart operation, and the doctor isn't coming because he's scared of COVID. Can't happen. And then I made sure that I attended office during this COVID time every single day. And that is the third challenge. So that is the challenge. I still feel that it was the most difficult time, most scary time. What I was scared too, because I'm only scared of unknown. Once you don't know something, that's the only thing which scares me. So that was the fear that I was carrying. So these are the top 3 challenges during my journey, I can tell you.
3 transformational strategies that you think that you have given to this industry, for which Barun is going to be remembered by the industry.
No, I don't think that I've done anything of that sort.
No,
People
you
would like to forget me in a jiffy. No, nothing. You see, this strategy, all these things, I don't look at things like that. I believe in simplicity, and I always believe, there's a gentleman, I've learned it from him.
I'll put it 3 innovations for the industry.
No, innovation is every day. So I'm telling you, to be ordinary is extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you ask me that what you've done, I stuck to the basic. So if somebody has to understand that this is the business, at the end of the day, the decisions taken are mine, and I got to be held responsible for the decisions that I've taken. I think often our industry gets very restless about things which are not very logical. Like at this point in time, I don't know when this interview will be released. We have a rating system called BARC. So it was stalled at some point in time. There's murmurs going on. Some people are not happy about it. They want to stall it. So collectively, they forget their own gain. If you stall rating system of news, which is now catering or garnering about 7% of the total television viewership in India, your allocation of budget would shrink. So even if you, let's say, by virtue of stalling the ratings, if you are a legacy brand, you get a higher share, but you're getting a higher share of a smaller pie. Eventually, you won't be better off. So I think the fundamentals, I often have seen that in understanding it is missing. I've seen the industry complaining about high carriage fees. I've seen the industry complaining about high auction fees for DD free dish. But then I thought that you're going and bidding for that auction. Nobody is putting a gun on your temple. Almost like the way, this, which is not in the news industry, but the private FM radio, when it came into being, people bid to that extent that the first year, if you go back and check, the total license fees paid by the industry was less than the revenue they've earned. So anyway, the phase 2 has turned different. So there's nothing excepting being very ordinary. Look at it as a business, handle the business nuances, and then set the ball rolling, give them the guidance, and get together a brilliant team. And it happened so that every time I've never fallen short of my targets. In fact, I've exceeded my deliverables always.
Great. So anything else you want to add of the leadership quality or anything before we go to the brand questions?
Leadership
About
quality.
the brand?
No.
Anything else you want to add, or this much is fine?
This much
So
is
just
fine.
off the records, you talked about this, of course, we'll edit it in any case, because you talked about solutions. There's a ex-colleague of mine, of course, I launched a media company and some magazines and all, and this guy joined from one of now the leading #1 Hindi news channel. He used to say that he's a very well-known ad sales guy in the industry. He used to tell me that, so he used to go to Daryaganj, and then that time, advertisers were big advertisers like Hondas and the typical big snooty advertisers. How that channel transformed the industry is they used to go to places like Daryaganj, and they used to pick up ads and shoot the ads and edit the ads themselves and used to run it. And like that, they started getting a lot of clients, and now today, of course, the Hindi channel market has become flooded with those kind of ads, and so that's another industry innovation. The brand is
you don't stay confined to this territory where you have been. You have to expand it. You have to expand, like regionalization of news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that was what I was driving when I was in Z. I realized that it's a regional language which will drive the industry. So that is another expansion and innovation and a focus. Then I believe that during that time, the focus, I was the one who was driving the focus on MSME industry. So India is large enough for any business to sustain.
MSME.
It's large enough. You just have to find out something which is.
In fact, this guy told me the channel is Aaj. He was the launch team of Aaj. This thing that this genre was hardly serviced, and these guys went into local markets, B towns, short ads for them. They used to just Bladas, Baniyas used to pay.
Yeah, that's correct. That time the audiovisual, I mean, it's almost like, there's again, if you go back in the 60s.
So that's a solution.
That's a solution. If you go back in the
solution.
60s, in fact, I learned it at length through a content called The Mad Men. That how when television was invented, how the advertising has shifted slowly from print ads to a television ad production ads comment. So that was to happen. And that's what happened in India. The entertainment channels were flourishing before that. You had news as a part of programming in the international entertainment channels.
Very interesting, the whole Indian news industry, how the transformation and how it's come up actually. Anyways, talk about News 9 Plus as an OTT platform, and what's your vision with the brand first?
Okay, first of all, that is one transformation that you can definitely say. I think we are living in a different world. Okay, different world. There's no hardly any similarity between the world that we were growing up and now, which is penetration, mobile penetration, internet penetration. Today, every kid is a global kid, right? I don't think any kid is picking up a newspaper, any teenager is picking up a newspaper, no teenager is watching television news, and so it's a different world. And then the changing taste of consumers as far as news is concerned was quite apparent in the English news TV genre, which was shrinking both in terms of viewership and in terms of revenue. Revenue potential. So we had a brand called News 9, which was a city-based English news channel in Bangalore. So when I joined, I realized that the brand was constantly bleeding, and I don't think that India was and would ever be ready for a city-based English news channel being a viable business proposition. So we shut it down. And then we realized that we are very strong in regional brands, but if you don't have an English, we miss out on that imagery perception. So therefore, English from our stable was a natural progression. So, but I didn't want to launch an English news channel because I thought a linear traditional channel is a regressive move, and I didn't see a path to profitability for a new launch then. But we had to have an English. And then you look at how entertainment genre has changed with so many OTTs. The one most scarce thing in today's life is time. So people would like to exercise choice. They want to watch what they want when they want. So I think it was a very obvious decision for me to first come up with this News 9 Plus, which is an OTT, a pure play OTT for news, but it's not really news as you break, because news gets broken in million pieces on the social media even before you start typing it. It is about perspective, analysis, deep diving. It's almost like this erstwhile magazines, let's say a Time magazine or an India Today magazine.
So what is the brand positioning you want to take with this?
So the brand positioning is that it is for the Genflix. So you define the positioning with the audience. So the Genflix is basically the generation which is watching Netflix. I'm taking Netflix as a generic for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is obviously English speaking, upwardly mobile audience. Because for them time is the most scarce commodity, so therefore resource, so therefore they would like to watch what they want when they want. So that's where News 9 Plus has come in as I think CNN Plus also have announced and launched also along with us, but they shut it down after their ownership changeover had happened. And I think we covered a lot of ground. Now the product is out in the market. It's a brilliant product. It's a world-class product. We've done a lot of research on that. We've a lot of experimentations. That why somebody would ask you that why Indian television hadn't seen that quality of product earlier on our news television. That's because it was very difficult. So we were taking there was a long gestation period, long turnaround time. We were taking 6 weeks to make one content. Now we've shrunk it to about 1/3 of where we started from, and the quality wasn't compromised. So it's a constant innovation there in terms of content, and that's for the viewers. And for advertising, there's another innovation I think that we are now driving in the digital ecosystem. I think traditional pure play advertising will not be very successful. Absolutely. Because you can easily skip it.
Yeah.
Right, and it is far more accessible on your palm or anywhere. We trying to create content like from News 9 Plus. The content is creating content out of news, which is our regular offering, and we are trying to create content out of advertising, brand stories. Okay. So that will drive the revenue. So it's not a traditional pure play. Yeah. And I think, and we've extended it to another version. So we now have come up with News 9 Live, which is a 24-hour streaming service, but that won't be available on the traditional platforms like DTH or cable. That will be only on digital ecosystem, either through our app or through connected TV. And that's future again. In metros, connected TV penetration is about 20 million. They say it will go up to 40. They are projecting for next 2 years, but I think it'll be more than 40.
So what is the viewership catch? Why should I watch you?
So that is another interesting question. The viewership catch that we want to, there are two products working in unison, which we are calling Mediaverse. News 9 Plus viewership catch would be that it's a conversation starter. As a professional, if you see, we don't do only two things, either of two, or some of us do both. Either we crunch numbers or we communicate.
Absolutely.
Right? So for communication, you need to be knowledgeable. You need to know things. So this is the catch, that this is an utility item. This is where you derive competitive advantage as far as your career is concerned. So that's how we curate the news. That things there'll be a compelling need for you to consume this content. You may not use it tomorrow as you go to your workplace, but it empowers you, enriches you in a way that you can participate in conversations which are relevant, which are happening around you. So that, and then we are trying to amplify that and also trying to continue to cater to this traditional way of news viewing through this streaming service.
So what is the marketing positioning that you would take for this?
Genflix, so when you are a category creator, I don't think that you need positioning. Like when you invented an airlines that it can fly you from one place to another place, you did not need a positioning. So we're not harping on positioning, we are more harping on the product feature.
Product features.
The product feature, which is a category creator, that it is something which will empower you in your area of work, and it also gives you the power of choice that you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want.
So Barun, my next question very related to this answer. You talked about that you will concentrate on product features as a prime thing. In branding exercises and positioning, they say that all at tomorrow's top channel also would launch it any which way it is. Anything which is successful will get replicated.
Absolutely.
And they might put better features, better entire visuals could be better, the UI could look better. So attributes can be copied. What do you think are the values and the value proposition that you would bring, or you have started bringing, or with your vision that you would bring, that you think would be irreplaceable? For example, NDTV at one time got in people who we thought were irreplaceable. Finally, of course, they got replaced, all left or got replaced. But at one time, we thought that Dr. Roy has built something which is irreplaceable for the Indian media. Positioning is still that, actually. So what do you think is a value proposition that you build for News 9 Plus, which you think will be irreplaceable and positions you as a market leader always?
No. So first of all, that you can't plan for it. Your positioning, value proposition, these are derived way forward. So you take cognizance of what's happening in the product market scenario, and at that point in time, what is the consumer psyche. So you don't plan for it right now, right? And you rightly said that yes, I would expect that others are in the drawing book, on their drawing board already, and they are trying to it's sooner than later that there will be other OTT products. I tend to think so, but then there are the 4 P's of marketing. Positioning is one of them. Then you have pricing, then you have product, place, promotion. So all these will evolve when the market gets competitive, and really no value proposition. Like today, if you take the entertainment OTTs, there are many. Like, so there's no specific value propositions. You have to remember that you're dealing with a product which has a very high information content. It's not like a soap that you claim that I'll become beautiful by applying that soap, and I create an imagery perception for it. It is I'm consuming that, and I know whether it has lived up to my expectations or not. So you are dealing with a product, a category which has high information content, and your differentiator would continue to be content, but the hygiene is the UI UX, the comfort, right? So that is where we would focus on in terms of technology. That I mean, if you see News 9 Plus, the UI UX is some of the best, one of the best in India now, and content will continue to be the differentiator. So whether you are equipped to think ahead of the market, whether you are ahead of the curve or following the curve, will finally decide how successful you are.
Barun, my last question to you. We've talked extensively about you as a leader and now about the brand, and it's doing pretty well. Congratulations for the launch and everything. So what's next? Where do we see you in the future with you and this brand, and what's the future of this brand? And does an Indian brand actually go global and make a huge impact globally?
So right, that's where we are heading towards. See, as a person or as a leader, if there's no challenge, I don't feel comfortable. So if there's no challenge, I keep creating challenge for me. In the broadcast sector, I think the kind of lead that we have with the number 2 in terms of leadership, I think it is unsurmountable in near future. But the News 9 Plus, with News 9 Plus, I'm fostering a global aspiration. I always felt that that India's rise to the global head table is imminent, and it's happening. We would definitely become one of the top 3 largest economies in the world in next 5 years. But what we need is that a global voice. Often we are at the receiving end of narratives which may not be always correct, and at the best we are reactive. We come up with our reactions, but we don't have our global voice. So which is what I feel that News 9 Plus would be able to fill that void. News, like the way we structured our company, the TV9 brands are for local, regional Hindi, and the regional languages. News9 is a global brand, and we would like to take it to elsewhere in the world as a mainstream news offering, a Mediaverse, which is an app and a 24-hour streaming. So that is where both for me and News9 Plus I'm working on. And the other one is that where I mean, it's a stressful job. I must tell you that this is one of the most complicated jobs under the sun. Driving a news channel, news network. You're dealing with factory size of workforce, where their intelligence they can match that of even the politicians.
Absolutely.
So it's a very difficult job. It's quite sensitive also, especially if you're the largest news network. What we do, the impact of that is gets far amplified. So it's a very sensitive job, and it's stressful. So where I relieve my stress from, or my stress reliever is, we ventured out into content. So, but the factual based content, which could be documentary, which could be fiction. So, and I'm looking at creating content which would be appreciated and watched at the global level. So with News9 Plus, it's a global aspiration that I'm fostering, and on the content side, that's where I see myself gravitating to as a retirement destination.
Awesome.
Creating content.
That's great. Lovely talking to you.
Thank
and
you.
We sincerely hope that you become one of the global brands from India. That's what, as a media company, as a brand equity company, we hope for. And in all my interviews with any Indian top company, I ask this question, and it's a hope that Indian brands will start making a huge global impact, and we'll start with you. Thanks a lot for the
Thanks a lot
for the talk.
Thank you.